started like any other Tuesday. Cold outside, soft drizzle on the windshield, and the kind of muted sky that makes 5 p.m. feel like 9. I left work a little early. Meetings had ended ahead of schedule, and for once, I didn't have to sit in traffic for over an hour just to crawl the last 3 blocks home. Honestly, I was in a good mood. I thought maybe I'd cook dinner. Not because of a special occasion or anything. Just because Haley had mentioned she left the grocery list in her tote bag that morning. She always carried this massive canvas bag around, the kind that seemed to contain everything from snacks to receipts to unopened mail. I brought in the groceries, set the bags on the counter, and went digging for the list. What I found instead stopped me cold. It was wedged under her compact mirror, folded into quarters, like it had been hidden in a hurry. It wasn't the shopping list. It was a hotel receipt, faintly creased, top corner slightly torn. My eyes locked on the hotel's name first. The Warwick Plaza, in downtown Chicago. Expensive. 5 stars. The kind of place people don't go alone. And definitely not the kind of place her girlfriends would have booked just to have face masks and wine. The receipt was dated for last weekend. The same weekend she told me she'd be at a spa retreat with her old college friends in Michigan. She had even sent a couple of photos, filtered, cropped tightly. Now I realized I never saw anyone else in them. Just Haley, smiling in a hotel bathrobe, holding up a glass of wine with some vague caption about self-care. My heart was suddenly too loud in my chest. My fingers ran along the paper again. Room 715. Check-in Friday, check-out Sunday. 2 guests. Her signature at the bottom, neat, unmistakably hers. I just stood there at the kitchen counter, staring down at this piece of paper that instantly rewrote the last 3 days of my life. The receipt wasn't screaming or accusing. It just sat there, quiet and damning. My stomach turned slowly, like it had to catch up to what my eyes already knew. I laid it flat on the counter, right next to the lemons and pasta sauce like it belonged there. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I just waited. She got home around 6:40. I heard the car pull in, the familiar jingle of her keys, and then the front door creaked open. "Hey, babe," she said in that sing-song voice she used when she was in a good mood, or pretending to be. She looked relaxed, dressed in her black leggings and oversized crew neck, hair pulled into a loose bun. She carried a yoga mat under one arm and a smoothie in the other hand, like every box had been checked to signal a casual, normal day. Then her eyes found the receipt. She froze for a second. A literal second. Just enough time for me to catch it. That flicker of something in her expression. Recognition. Fear? Guilt? She covered it quickly. "Oh," she said, forcing a chuckle. "You found that?" She moved to the fridge and opened it, as if she could out-casual the moment. "I meant to toss it. It's from last weekend." "Yeah, I guess it looked kind of weird, huh?" I didn't answer, just watched her. She kept talking too fast. "It's not what you think. It was for Maddie's birthday. We all chipped in for a hotel night downtown. Total surprise. Like the dumbest thing, we did a champagne brunch and stayed up playing cards. I barely even stayed the night. We just wanted to do something different." Still, I said nothing. My silence was making her nervous, I could tell. She turned to face me fully now. "Ryan, come on. You really think I'd lie to you about something like that?" There it was. That subtle shift in tone. An accusation hidden inside a question. "Why was your name the only one on the reservation?" I asked. "It was my card," she said quickly. "I paid up front. Everyone Venmo'd me later. 2 guests listed." She hesitated. "It defaulted to that. You know how those online forms are." I gave a slow nod, not because I believed her, but because I needed to see how far she'd go. Then she did the thing she always did when she didn't want to talk anymore. She got cold. Not angry, cold. Voice low and sharp. "I don't know what's going on with you, but this kind of paranoia isn't healthy," she said, crossing her arms. "You're making something out of nothing." And just like that, it was over, at least on the surface. She walked upstairs without another word. The receipt sat between us, burning a hole in the space that used to feel safe. I didn't follow her. I didn't bring it up again. But something broke inside me that night. Not loud or messy. Just this quiet shatter, like a mirror cracking in a dim room. I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't unknow it. I went through the motions after that. Made pasta. Set the table. She came down a while later, acting like everything was fine. Talking about work. Asking if I remembered to grab oat milk. Scrolling through her phone between bites. She even laughed at something on Instagram and showed it to me like nothing had changed. But it had. Something shifted. I wasn't reacting the way I used to. I didn't jump to defend myself or try to smooth things over. I just listened. Observed. That night, she went to bed early. Said she was tired. I stayed downstairs, sitting on the edge of the couch in the dark, replaying the same question in my head over and over. Was this the first time, or just the first time she slipped? Because deep down, I already knew the answer. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there with my back to her, eyes open, staring at the vague outline of the ceiling fan spinning above us. Her breathing beside me was even soft. She slept like someone with a clean conscience. I envied that, or maybe I hated it. My mind couldn't stop turning over the receipt, the handwriting, the room number, the way her tone shifted when I asked the wrong questions. The way she made me feel like I was crazy for even asking. The way she didn't offer the truth. Just a string of half-explanations so brittle they fell apart if you pressed on them. I used to think I was imagining things. That I was reading too much into the way her phone was always face down on the table now, or how she started taking it into the bathroom, even just to brush her teeth. I told myself it was nothing when she stopped saying, "I love you," unless I said it first. I made excuses for the extra hours at work, the quick changes of subject when I asked about her day, the way she started locking the bathroom door, something she'd never done in the 5 years we'd been married. I used to believe it was stress, or burnout, or maybe just a phase. But the thing about denial is it needs a steady diet of hope to survive. That hotel receipt? It starved the whole system. The next morning, I watched her get ready from the edge of the bed. She hummed as she picked out her outfit, sipping her coffee, still in that oversized t-shirt from college she always wore on casual Fridays. I used to think she looked beautiful like that, messy, natural. Now I just felt distant, like I was watching a version of her that no longer included me. She caught me staring. "What?" "Nothing," I said. A flicker of something crossed her face. Suspicion, maybe, or guilt, or both. But she didn't press. That was the new game between us. Neither of us saying what we really meant. Her pretending she had nothing to explain. Me pretending I still believed her. After she left for work, I just sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold. I didn't check her phone. I didn't dig through her drawers. I didn't do any of the things a desperate man does when he wants to catch his wife lying. Because the truth was, I didn't need more proof. What I needed was to stop lying to myself. I started thinking back. Not just to last weekend, but further. Weeks, months. It had started subtly. She stopped texting back as quickly. Her replies were short, dry. She used to send me random pictures of our dog or songs that reminded her of me. Now it was just the occasional K or yep, one-word texts that filled space but meant nothing. I remembered the first time I noticed her change her passwords. Not long after New Year's. She said work was tightening up on digital security. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I remembered the first time she bought a dress I'd never seen her wear around me. Tight, low-cut, red. I found the tag in the trash before she ever wore it in front of me. When I asked, she said it was for Maddie's engagement party. But when I showed up to that party later, she wore jeans and a sweater. She said the dress didn't fit right. I remembered how she laughed less with me. Or maybe I just noticed it less. Her gaze had changed. It stopped landing. She'd ask how my day was, but her eyes would drift to her phone before I even answered. Then came the gym phase, the diet changes, the sudden interest in skincare routines and boutique workout classes. I told her she looked amazing, and she smiled, but never at me. Through me, maybe. It wasn't just what she was doing. It was what she had stopped doing. She didn't sit next to me on the couch anymore. She didn't play with my hair while I read. She used to fall asleep with her head on my chest. Now she turned the other way, At first, I told myself it was normal. People change. Marriages shift. Macy waxes and wanes. Everyone hits ruts. But now that I had the receipt, now that the last thread of denial had snapped, it all fell into place with horrifying clarity. She hadn't just drifted. She'd left. Quietly. Slowly. Without packing a bag or saying a word. And I had refused to see it. It's strange how your memory reshapes when you allow it to. Once you open that door, everything you thought was innocent suddenly sharpens. Reframes. Like the night she said she was going to dinner with coworkers, and I offered to drive her. She said no, said she was Ubering because parking would be a mess downtown. I remembered thinking how odd it was she came home without leftovers, without even smelling like food. But she'd kissed me goodnight and smiled, and I let it go. Or the weekend she said she was helping Maddie move. How she didn't answer her phone for hours. How when I finally reached her, she answered breathlessly and said she'd left it in her bag. I remember hearing something in the background. Music? A television? It was faint, but not the sound of someone loading boxes in a friend's new apartment. I had trusted her. Deeply. Blindly. The kind of trust you don't even think about because it's so woven into the fabric of your daily life that you forget it's something you're offering. She had turned that trust into camouflage. And the worst part? I don't even think she felt bad about it. Not really. There was something calculated in her deflections. Pattern. Like she had practiced. She was never overly defensive. Just enough to make me question myself. She always sprinkled in just enough warmth to keep me uncertain. Not enough to feel close. Just enough to keep me hopeful. It was manipulation dressed as normalcy. And I had swallowed every bit of it. That afternoon I went to the gym. I hadn't been in a while, and it felt like I was dragging dead weight through every motion. But I needed to move. I needed the pain in my arms to drown out the pressure in my chest. Afterward, I sat in my car, sweaty and spent, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look different, but I didn't recognize myself either. I looked like someone holding on to a life that no longer existed. That night, I didn't bring up the receipt again. She asked what I wanted for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. She asked if something was wrong. I said I was just tired. And the lie tasted familiar in my mouth. Maybe that's the most bitter part of betrayal. Not just the fact that someone you love lied to you, but the realization that you began lying to yourself just to keep it from hurting. That you shrank your own voice. Flattened your own gut instincts. Also, you wouldn't have to ask the one question that might unravel everything. What if they're not the person I thought they were? I watched her that evening as she folded laundry. She made a comment about her boss being annoying, rolled her eyes, laughed softly. It was such a normal moment. And yet, I couldn't stop imagining her in that hotel room, with someone else, laughing like that, unburdened, unbothered. It hit me then that I wasn't mourning her. Not really. I was mourning the version of her I had built in my mind. The one who would never do this. The one who would choose us every time. That version didn't exist. And maybe never had. A week passed. We didn't talk about the receipt. Not once. She never brought it up and I didn't push. It just sat in the back of my mind, like a window cracked open during a storm, letting in wind, rain, and doubt in measured, relentless doses. I could feel it seeping into everything, but I didn't close it. I didn't know how. On Thursday, Haley mentioned her company's annual corporate event. It was being held at some convention space in downtown Chicago. Cocktail attire, open bar, formal but casual. Spouses are welcome, she added, almost like an afterthought, as she buttered her toast that morning. Actually, kind of expected. I blinked. You want me to come? She looked up from the counter, met my eyes for a second too long, then smiled. Of course. Why wouldn't I? I didn't answer. I think part of me wanted to say no, to bow out and avoid the ache of pretending. But another part of me, the part that still hadn't completely let go, needed to see something. I didn't know what. Proof maybe. Confirmation. Or maybe I just needed to know if I was truly invisible to her now, even in public. So I agreed. Friday came fast. I shaved. Put on a navy blazer I hadn't worn in over a year. I stared at myself in the mirror longer than usual, not because I looked good, but because I wasn't sure I looked like someone who still belonged in her world. Haley came down the stairs in a black satin dress I'd never seen before, tight at the waist, slid up the side. Her hair was done in soft waves, makeup understated but flawless. She looked beautiful. There was no denying that. She looked like someone I used to know. "You look great," I said automatically. She smiled, distracted. "Thanks. You too." We drove into the city mostly in silence. She scrolled on her phone, replying to texts, giving vague updates to someone. I didn't ask who. I stared out the window, watching the skyline sharpen as we passed through the outer neighborhoods. She turned up the music at one point. I didn't object. The venue was a sleek, modern convention hall nestled between two glass high-rises. Valet parking, warm lighting, music spilling out into the chilled air as we stepped inside. Haley greeted the receptionist at the check-in table with a bright, effortless charm I hadn't seen in months. She lit up like someone flipping a switch. Inside, the room was buzzing. Soft jazz played overhead. People in suits and cocktail dresses mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Haley immediately became someone else. Not in a deceptive way, but in a way that made me realize how much of her life I no longer had access to. She seemed alive. She moved between conversations with ease, laughed, nodded, brushed elbows with junior staff and execs alike. She introduced herself to people I didn't recognize but never once turned to introduce me. I was beside her, but I wasn't part of her. She didn't notice. I stood near the bar for most of the evening, sipping slowly from a sweating glass of club soda. I watched her from across the room, and for a second, just a second, I wondered if she had ever really wanted me to come at all, or if she just asked out of obligation. At one point, I wandered upstairs to the mezzanine, just to breathe. The upstairs had a wide-open view of the dance floor below, separated by a glass railing. I leaned against it, letting the faint vibration of music hum through my arms. That's when I saw her. She was on the dance floor, laughing again, brighter than I'd seen her in months. But it wasn't the laughter that undid me. It was the man she was with. I didn't recognize him. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Tall, trim beard, gray suit, confident posture. His hand rested gently on her lower back as they swayed to the music. Casual enough to seem innocent, but firm enough to claim space. Her hand, relaxed, was lightly pressed against his chest. She leaned in as he said something in her ear. Then he kissed her temple. She didn't flinch, didn't look around, didn't pull away. She smiled. Not nervously, not apologetically, but comfortably, naturally. Like this was not new. Like this had happened before. And that's when it happened. Not a rush of anger. Not a snap of heartbreak. Just a quiet, hollowing stillness. I stood there for a long time. I didn't know how long. Long enough to watch them move through 3 songs, 2 conversations, and 1 slow fade into a corner where they stood closer than necessary. I felt disconnected from it, like I wasn't even in the same building anymore. Like I was watching someone else's wife betray someone else's life. But it was mine, and I was awake in it. There was nothing left to interpret. No room for misunderstanding or benefit of the doubt. The receipt was a warning. This was the verdict. It didn't feel cinematic. Felt cold. Surgical. I left before she noticed me. I slipped out through a side door, walked past the valet stand without giving my ticket, and started down the block. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. The city felt strangely quiet despite the traffic and hum of nightlife. My steps echoed on the sidewalk like I was the only one out there. I passed a group of people laughing loudly outside a cafe. Their joy made me feel more alone than anything else. I kept walking. At one point, I stopped and looked up at the tall buildings around me. Windows lit up like stars in neat grids. People living their lives in boxes above mine. Making dinner, watching movies, kissing someone who was still choosing them. I wanted to be angry. I really did. But all I could feel was this dull weight in my chest. Like someone had placed a brick there and told me to walk normally. Eventually, I circled back to the garage and got my car. I drove home with the radio off and the windows cracked just enough to let the cold in. I thought about calling someone, my brother, maybe, but what would I say? Hey, guess what? My wife's cheating on me. I confirmed it at her office party. No, I didn't want comfort. I didn't want explanations. I just wanted silence. Back home, I changed out of my dress shirt, pulled on a sweatshirt, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. I could still smell her perfume on my collar. It wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't a question. It was real. The betrayal was no longer theoretical. It had a face, a body, a dress, a hotel room, temple kiss, a choice. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I just sat there in a kind of stillness I'd never known before. It didn't hurt like fire. It hurt like frost. And it was spreading. I didn't tell her I saw. I didn't confront her. I just let the night pass like fog, thick, quiet, and heavy with things unsaid. When she came home, it was late. I heard the front door open, the sound of her heels on the hardwood, the soft clatter of keys landing in the bowl. I stayed in bed, lights off, eyes open. She didn't come upstairs right away. I heard the fridge open, the wine bottle twist, a single glass pour. Then silence. Maybe she was thinking about what to say. Maybe she wasn't thinking at all. When she finally came to bed, she did it gently, almost performative. She tiptoed into the room like a teenager sneaking past curfew. She undressed quietly, slid under the covers without a word. I kept my breathing slow. She lay there beside me on her side, facing the wall, inches away, entire worlds apart. It was the most honest moment we'd shared in weeks. I didn't sleep. Again. My body lay still, but my mind thrashed in the undertow. Everything had changed, and yet here we were. Same bed, same silence, same performance. But something inside me had broken. Quietly, without flame or fury. Not a shatter, more like a slow dismantling. A chair that looked fine until you sat in it and felt the collapse. The next morning, I woke up before her. Not because I wanted to. My body just couldn't pretend anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the carpet, listening to her steady breathing behind me. The sun crept in through the blinds, stripes of light casting across our room like prison bars. I showered, got dressed, made coffee. It all felt mechanical, like I was a visitor in someone else's house. She came downstairs an hour later. Her eyes were puffy, maybe from sleep, maybe from something else. She smiled faintly when she saw me. Morning. I nodded. Morning. She moved around the kitchen with unnecessary energy. Small talk about her boss. Something about a presentation next week. She mentioned being exhausted from the event. You were great, by the way, she added, forcing warmth into her voice. I didn't respond, just sipped my coffee and stared at the backyard through the window. The grass needed mowing. The patio chair had blown over. Life kept moving even as everything else fell apart. After she left for work, I didn't go to my office. I didn't check email. Instead, I opened a new bank account. I transferred what I needed quietly, carefully. No dramatic gestures. No red flags. I called my service providers and removed her name from every shared login. Changed passwords. Disabled shared calendars. I deleted her fingerprint from my phone. Not out of spite, just practicality. By noon, I had already started dismantling the version of our life we had built together. And the strangest part? It didn't feel like rage. It felt like breathing after holding my breath underwater for too long. I didn't text her that day. She didn't text me either. That night, she came home to dinner already cooked. Not for her, for me. She commented on how the house smelled. I didn't answer. We didn't eat together. She scrolled her phone on the couch while I ate at the counter. I think that was when she started to feel it. Not the guilt. The distance. She asked if I wanted to watch something. I told her I was tired. Went to bed early. Alone. The next few days played out like that. Familiar rituals repurposed into empty motions. She asked fewer questions. I gave fewer answers. We were roommates with shared memories and unspoken grief. And yet, she didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't mention the receipt. She didn't bring up the party. Maybe she thought if she didn't name it, it wouldn't be real. Or maybe she thought she still had time to cover the cracks with routine. But the truth was, I wasn't waiting anymore. Something inside me had folded in on itself. The part of me that wanted to fight for us. The part that wanted her to choose me. The part that still believed she might. Gone. I started going to the gym in the mornings again. Not because I wanted to get revenge or glow up out of spite. I just needed something solid. Something mine. I changed my commute. Took the long way to work. Played different podcasts. Got new earbuds. I stopped checking my phone compulsively for texts that never came. I let go of the part of me that used to count the minutes between her responses. I didn't make any announcements. Didn't slam doors. Didn't write long, painful monologues. I just began detaching, piece by piece. And in a way, it was almost peaceful. Like walking out of a building quietly on fire, not bothering to warn anyone inside. I kept my voice level, kept my actions small. But every decision I made was louder than anything I could have screamed. The silence I gave her wasn't passive. It was a message. She didn't understand it. Not at first. She kept pretending, asking about groceries, telling me stories about people I didn't care about, laughing at TV shows we used to watch together, occasionally reaching out, touching my arm, brushing past me with intention, kissing me on the cheek before bed, testing the temperature. She was looking for the old Ryan, the one who'd cave, the one who'd say, "Let's talk," the one who'd pull her aside and beg for clarity, for honesty, for anything. But that man wasn't here anymore. What she didn't realize was that I had already left. Not the house, not the marriage, technically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally, gone. And I think that scared her more than any argument would have. Because silence has gravity, pulls at you. It forces you to hear things you've spent months trying to avoid. By the end of the week, I noticed her tone changing. Less casual, more hesitant. She started asking if I was okay, if we were okay. I told her I was fine, and I was not happy, not yet, but free in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't obsessing anymore. I wasn't tracking her phone or scrolling through her texts in my head. I wasn't doing the math on timelines or wondering about excuses. I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I had already chosen myself. She thought it would pass. I could see it in the way she looked at me. Like this distance, this strange version of me, was just a phase I'd eventually climb out of. Like I'd snap one morning and go back to being the Ryan who over-explained everything, who leaned in first, who fought to make sure we were okay. I used to carry the weight of her moods like they were mine to fix. Now I let them drop. And that silence, it unnerved her. At first she tried to fill it. She talked more. About work. About people I didn't know. She'd scroll Instagram near me and comment out loud about someone's baby or vacation. She started asking if I wanted anything from the store again, little things like oat milk or the cereal I used to eat. She even offered to bake something one night. Haley, who hadn't touched a mixing bowl in years. I just nodded and said I wasn't hungry. It was subtle at first, but I noticed the shift. She'd lean against the doorframe when I was in the garage, watching me organize tools I hadn't used in ages. "What you doing?" she'd ask. I'd say, "Tidying." She'd hover, waiting for more. But there wasn't more. She was used to the version of me that chased resolution. The one who couldn't stand awkwardness. But I had discovered something she hadn't expected. My silence was no longer a reaction. It was a boundary. And she didn't know what to do with that. She started fishing. "Are you mad at me?" "No. You've been weird lately. Just busy. You never talk to me anymore. I'm here." She didn't like that answer. But she didn't press either. Because to press would mean acknowledging the thing neither of us had the stomach to say out loud. That something had broken, and no amount of polite conversation could glue it back together. The more I pulled back, the more she started performing stability. She cleaned more, cooked a few times, wore my old college sweatshirt around the house, like she was trying to summon nostalgia. She even suggested we do something together that weekend, go hiking, maybe a wine tasting. I agreed. Then I canceled the morning of. Told her I had a deadline. She didn't argue, but her expression said everything. This was new ground for her. Me saying no. Me not apologizing for needing space. Me not needing her permission to feel disappointed. I could tell it made her nervous. There's something deeply unsettling about watching someone realize they no longer have emotional power over you, especially when they'd grown comfortable assuming they always would. Her texts started coming more frequently, even when we were both at home. Do you want to watch something? Can I make you tea? Are we okay? I answered most of them, but briefly, and without emotion. Not because I was being cruel, but because I was done performing concern I didn't feel anymore. I started waking up early, earlier than she did. I'd go to the gym, come home and make my own breakfast, eat in silence, read. By the time she came downstairs, I'd already lived a full life in the few hours before she spoke her first word. She started noticing the changes. You've been dressing different lately. Yeah. You like. Care again. I shrugged. Feels good. She blinked. That wasn't the answer she expected. Not thanks, you noticed. Not it's for work. Just that feels good. That was the new me. Unbothered. And it wasn't an act. I had found something she'd taken from me a long time ago. My center. And once I had it back, I wasn't about to give it up again. I started reading again. Listening to podcasts. Long walks with no destination. I picked up boxing. Something I hadn't done since college. There was something beautiful about the routine of it. The rhythm. The permission to release without words. The more I rebuilt, the less she understood me. One night, she found me in the living room, notebook open, scribbling something. She stood there for a minute before speaking. What are you writing? Just thoughts. Can I see? No. She laughed a little. Okay, mystery man. But her eyes weren't amused. They were scanning me like I was a stranger in my own house. And in a way I was the version of me she'd known, the one who overcommunicated, who soothed her insecurities, who always reached across the bed first. That man was gone. In his place was someone quiet, still, unpredictable in his peace. And that scared her more than anger ever could. She tried to provoke me once. About a week in, we were folding laundry in the bedroom. She brought up an old argument out of nowhere. Something from 2 years ago, some dumb fight about holiday plans. You always do this thing, she said, where you shut down instead of talk. I looked at her, folded the last shirt, and calmly said, I think I've earned the right to shut down. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because she knew. She knew I wasn't talking about holidays. And suddenly the room felt smaller, tighter. She left to shower. I stayed behind, laid back on the bed, and closed my eyes. Not from exhaustion, but relief. I wasn't reacting anymore. I wasn't biting bait. And she could feel it. I started journaling every day. 10 minutes in the morning. 15 before bed. It wasn't about her. Not directly. It was about me. Figuring out how I'd gotten here, who I'd become, what I needed next. I stopped trying to understand her motives. I stopped analyzing her schedule or her texts or the mysterious names that popped up when her phone lit up face down. I let it go. Not because I forgave it, but because I refused to let it control me anymore. And that's what silence became. Not an absence of love, but an act of self-respect. Haley didn't know what to do with that. She kept reaching for something that was no longer there. Asking questions with eyes, with touch, with tone. But I had stopped offering answers. One night, she stood in the doorway while I packed a gym bag. You've changed. I zipped the bag. Yeah, I have. I don't know if I like it. I looked up, calm as ever. That's okay. And I meant it. It was the first time in our marriage I realized I didn't need her approval to become someone better. She watched me for a second longer, then turned and walked away. And that was it. No fight. No scene. Just one more thread snapping between us.